We're going to talk about taxes in this chapter, and so we're going to get started out with a discussion about sales tax and how sales tax works. Later on, we'll talk about income tax and some of the intricacies with that. But for right now, we're going to start with sales tax. So, as most of you know, anytime you want to buy goods in most states, you'll have to pay what's called a sales tax. It's just money you pay on top of the sales amount of a specific purchase that goes to the government. So, for instance, Michigan has a 6% sales tax on most goods. Now, when I say most goods, obviously there are certain exceptions for this. And in each state, what goods are taxable and what goods aren't taxable vary. And by taxable, I mean it's a product or a service to which sales tax is applied. So, for instance, if you go out to McDonald's and pay for food there, you're going to have to pay a sales tax. If you go to Myers and you pay for certain kinds of foods, then you won't have a sales tax in Michigan. Now, for the sake of our discussions, if I say we have a certain amount of goods, we're going to assume that those goods are taxable. Now, one thing all sales taxes have in common is that it's a percentage based, at least all sales taxes in the United States. The vast majority anyways. If there's one that's not, then I'm not 100% sure where it's located. So when I say percentage based, I just mean that you're going to take a percentage rate and you're going to multiply that times price of whatever taxable goods you had. And that becomes your sales tax. And if you want to click on the link to the taxfoundation.org, you can actually look these things up. And it's pretty easy to do a quick Google search on what the current sales tax rates are throughout the United States. Each state varies up and down and all that kind of good stuff. So since we're talking about sales tax and we know that they're all percentage based, you should ask yourself, since we're talking about percentages, how do you actually calculate with percentages? And so we're going to look at the first example and say, okay, so if I say what is 25% of 100? How do you calculate that? Now, most people are going to take and just write out 25% of 100. It's a multiplication process that most everybody has seen before. Now, when I say 25%, you can think of that as 25 over 100, or you can think of that as 0.25. Either way, you're going to multiply it times the $100, and either way, you're going to see that becomes 25% of 100 is $25. And the same thing is true if we're talking about $315. So if I take 25%, think of it as 25 over 100, 25 over 100, and multiply that times the 315. Or I tend to, and real quickly, I'm going to get into using decimal points for percentages rather than the division by 100 because I just think it's faster and easier to write. But in any case, you take your calculator, push 0.25 times 315, and you'll find that 25% of 315 is $78.75. So in general, that's what you're going to do. You're going to take and you're going to translate your percentage over 100 like I said, most of the time that's going to be a decimal point for this class. I'm going to put it in a decimal point. And you're going to multiply times whatever amount you have. Now, this amount, I want to be clear on this. This is of the original, well, this is the original price in this case. But in general, it's always the percentage over 100 times the original. Okay? Now, again, this dividing by 100, this percentage over 100, basically has the effect that you move your decimal place over 2 spots. So 25% becomes 0.25. And if you did 8%, you'd have 0.08. And so on and so forth. So let's translate for these. I want you to do these on your own. Take a few minutes to do this. Push pause on the video. Do them on your own, and then I'll write out the answers. So hopefully you push pause and got the right answers. So I'm just going to go through these step by step. And again, if my pen isn't as bright or isn't as good, maybe I'll have to redo this. But so in this case, 5% is 0.05 times 19. 6% of 32 is 0.06 times 32. 4.25 do 0.0425, and that's times 114. And then 0.25%, that's less than 1%. That is 0.0025. And we're multiplying that by 412. So if you take 5% of 19 back at the top there, you're going to get 0.95. And since this is in dollars, this is going to be 0.95 of a dollar. Notice that is not $95. And by the way, the notation here, we want to have 0.95 of a dollar. That is not 0.95 cents. 95 cents is dollar. When you do 6% of 32, that comes out as 1.92. This is also in dollars. Oops. 0.0425. 0.0425 times 114. Now this one's a little bit tricky because we get, when you calculate this, 4.845. And we know that since we're talking about dollars, 0.845 doesn't really work. So what we're going to do, anytime that we're talking about money and we have a final answer with more than 2 decimal places, we're going to round to 2 decimal places. That way we have dollars and cents, and we don't go any further than that. Again, we're just going to do that on the final answer, though, so we don't want to round before that. Now, by the way, a quick lesson in rounding, right? We have 0.845, so since we're rounding this to 2 decimal places, so since we have 5 or above to the right of the 4, that 4 is going to go up to the next nearest integer. If we had 4 or below here, then that 4 would stay a 4. Now lastly, we have 0.0025, that's 0.25 of a percent, multiplied by 412. And this one we don't need to round, just like the previous two. So you get $1.03. Alright, so let's start with an example. Our first example of sales tax is going to be, we're going to do this in the state of Michigan. So that means we have a 6 sales tax. There's at least 6% in 2014 when this video is being made. So let's pretend you go into a store and you buy $415.42 worth of taxable goods. How much sales tax do you pay? Well, in this case, it's a pretty straightforward calculation. Take 0.06, multiply it times your $415.42. Type that into your calculator. And you're going to get, well, again, it's one of those long decimal points, but if you round it correctly, you should figure out that you pay $24.93. The decimal point is 0.9252, and so that would round that to up to a 3. Now this is the amount of tax you pay, but your bill at checkout is going to be your original amount of taxable goods plus the sales tax. So if you take the $415.42, add on the sales tax, you're going to get $440.35. Hopefully you've caught that, $440.35. Now, if you went and bought the same $415.42 worth of taxable goods in a different state, let's say Illinois, then again, their sales tax rate is going to be a little bit different. Okay? Now, I will say Illinois is kind of a mess to talk about sales tax, and this is a good example. This is a good time to say that when I'm talking about sales tax here, it's going to be the basic rate. We're not talking about, there's municipalities in Illinois who charge more, so if you buy something in Chicago, it's going to cost more than if you buy it in one of the rural areas of Illinois. And so the base rate of the Illinois sales tax is 6.25%. However, you can be charged up to 10% in certain local municipalities. But let's say we go into a rural area of Illinois and the actual sales tax rate is 6.25%. So if we bought the same $415.42, and we want to calculate the sales tax, again, remember this is 0.0625 multiply $415.42. I got that the sales tax now is $25.96. All right. And that means if we're talking about how much do you pay at checkout, we've paid $441.38 at checkout. Now, a lot of times it's useful to get this amount at checkout in just one step. So I wanted to take just a moment about that now. Remember, we're increasing the price, this original price of $415.42. We're increasing by 6.25%. Another way to think about increasing by 6.25% is to take our original price and instead of saying increase by 6.25%, say we really want 106.25% of the original. So the price at checkout is going to be 106.25% of the original. Now how this helps us is that we have this 1.0625, that's 106.25%, we can multiply that times our price, $415.42, and come up with the exact same answer that we had before. So if I'm talking about the price at checkout, you can actually do that not in 2 steps, but in 1. And again, here's the 2-step method of calculating sales tax. You calculate how much tax, and that's comes from, this isn't a minus, that's a, should be an equal sign, is a percentage of the amount of goods you bought. So to calculate the final amount, I should have put an equal sign there, you take the amount of tax you got plus the amount of goods. So this is what it all comes down to. Final amount is goods plus percentage times goods. And so the percentage times your good, that's your tax, that's how much tax you pay. And then you add the goods on. So what I'm proposing is the 1 step is your final amount is your percentage of tax. I'm going to call that PER for percent. Take 100 and whatever your percentage is, and multiply it times the amount of your original price of your goods. So 1 plus some percentage rate times your original price. So what we can do is we can ask a few different questions. First off, the questions that we've previously asked. If you know the goods, how much taxable goods you've bought, and you know the sales tax percentage, you can find the final amount. But with this 1-step process, you can always ask yourself the sort of reverse question. If you knew the final amount, could you have found the original price? And if you know 2 states have different sales tax rates, how much could you save buying in Illinois versus buying in Michigan? Or vice versa, buying in Michigan, in fact, in the previous example, was better tax rate than in Illinois. So I want you to do this one on your own. Remember, Michigan has a 6% sales tax rate. So push pause on the video, calculate this, and then do your thing. So hopefully you push pause, and again, I'm going to do this in a 1-step system. So we're going to take the $5,320 worth of taxable goods, and I say my final checkout price is going to be 106%, 1.06, of that amount. So if you multiply this out, you get that your final checkout price is $5,639.20. Again, try this one on your own. This is another example. Push pause and then come back and see if you did it right. Alright, so again, Michigan has a 6% sales tax rate. By the way, that's not something you need to memorize. I would, if I ask you on a test or a quiz or something, you can always look up the percentage of sales tax, or I would give that. Most likely, I'd give those things to you. Michigan, again, is a fairly straightforward sales tax where everywhere you go in Michigan, it's roughly 6% on the taxable goods. If you go to a state like Illinois, it's kind of a mess of what's taxable and what's not, and all of the different municipality rates. But in any regard, in Michigan, if I'm looking for the final price, that's 106% of the original. So 106% of the original. I'm going to write the 476 over here. And you end up saying that the final price, or the final checkout price, the way I like to call it, is $504.56. Now we're going to do the reverse. Now, if I said I have the final price, what's the original amount? Now this just takes a bit of algebra, but we're gonna set up a really quick equation. We know that the final price is going to be, since we're in Michigan, 106% times the original, right? And so now we have the final price, that's $560. That should be 106% of the original. And I think I'm going to call the original, I'll call that a capital G. I don't know why. So if you remember back to your 104 or to your basic math class, 1.06 times G, to solve this equation, we can divide both sides by 1.06. I expect you guys to type that in your calculator. And then you are going to have, again, a little bit of rounding to do. So what we're going to say is that the original price, what I call G, is $528.30. And for this question, that's all you have to do, is you have to give me the final monetary amount of $528.30. All right, so I want you guys to try this one on your own about finding the original price. Again, push pause on the video, wait a few, try to do it on your own, and then in a few seconds I'll come back and do it. All right, so hopefully you did that, you calculated the actual original amount. I'm going to do it fairly quickly. So 106%, we know the final price is 3,456. That's 106% of our original, which I'll call G again. So divide both sides by 1.06. Original price, type that in your calculator, 3,456 divided by 1.06. And again, you have to round this, but $3,260.38 is your original price. And so I hope you got that, and hopefully you calculated that. And again, we're doing some algebra here, but it's not very complex algebra. It's algebra that you should have been able to have seen in our Math 104 or in a previous algebra class. Now, a couple of things we want to do, well, one other thing we want to do is we want to talk about comparisons of sales tax. Specifically, let's give us two states. The two states I talked about so far are Michigan, and by the way, Michigan, again, had a 6% sales tax rate. And we saw Illinois, which had a 6.25% sales tax rate. So let's pretend I'm going to go buy a new car, and that car was all taxable in Michigan and taxable in Illinois. If the car is worth $4,000, or whatever the goods were worth $4,000, how much would I have saved if I had bought the car in Michigan versus I buy the car in some rural town in Illinois? This clearly makes me set up two competing scenarios. One where I buy the car in Michigan or buy the whatever in Michigan, and the other where I buy the thing in Illinois. So we're going to do that. Remember, this is a $4,000 taxable goods. And we're going to do that on the next slide because this slide will have be a little bit cramped for room. So in Michigan, remember we're buying this $4,000 worth of taxable goods. So in Michigan, the final amount is going to be 1.06, 106% of the $4,000. Not drawing it very well, but good. In Illinois, the final amount is going to be very similar, 1.0625 times the $4,000. All right. So basically all you have to do is multiply. And in Michigan, we see that our final amount is 4,240. In Illinois, again, this stuff I'm just typing into my calculator, is what I get is 4,250. So clearly, we save $10 by buying in Michigan. Okay. Again, all I'm doing is subtracting. That's fairly obvious. So you are going to save that $10 by buying in Michigan. And by the way, this is a real thing that happens. And oftentimes people will go to certain states to buy goods to escape whatever sales tax that they're being charged. Okay? It's no coincidence that the Mall of America is in Minnesota because some of the things that are in the Mall of America, namely some of the clothing, don't actually get taxed in Minnesota like they do in the neighboring states. And by the way, in a similar vein, companies move and go to different states and go to different countries because of lower tax rates or even incentivized tax rates where they'll get a special break. If you look at some certain companies in Michigan have come to Michigan because they got a certain tax break by building here and things of that nature. So with buying in different states, that does often come with a price. The same thing with moving companies to different states. It often comes with a price. You know, if you're building a company, there's huge prices involved because you have to move the buildings, move the personnel, and so on and so forth. But let's just take a really simple example. Let's say somebody lives in Illinois and they know that it's going to cost them $300 to go to Michigan rather than to buy in Illinois. So, in other words, if they want to buy something in Michigan to get the lower tax rate, they know it's going to cost $300. Now, the question comes, when is it actually worth to make the trip? When is it more profitable to buy in Michigan rather than Illinois if it actually costs you $300 to go to Michigan rather than to stay in Illinois? Now, there's two ways to do this, and I'm going to just do one way. All right? Realize that the difference, what we were talking about earlier, Michigan has a 6%, so it's going to be a 106% of the original price in goods. We want to get to a place where the difference of that 6% and the 6.25% that you'd pay in Illinois is, excuse me, is $300 essentially. So what we're going to do is we're just going to subtract. We're going to take the higher taxing percentage. We have 106.25%. That's our rate of our final amount in Illinois. And we're going to take 106%. That's our final percentage of our final amount in Michigan. And we're going to subtract this off. So there's a 0.25 of a percent difference. Okay? So what we're asking is when is 0.25% of the original amount, when is the difference equal to 300? So we're going to take our 0.25%. By the way, we already did this when we dealt with decimals and percentages. That's 0.0025 is decimal. Times our goods. We want that to be a final amount of 300. So divide by 0.0025. And what we find is that for the difference of our final goods, final amount we pay, to be 300, the original price is going to have to be $120,000. So it's probably not worth it to go to Michigan to buy groceries. Well, there's 0% on percentage sales tax on groceries, but it's probably not worth it to go to buy a $10,000 car. But if you're going to buy something that's gigantic and cost you over $120,000, then it is actually more affordable to go to Michigan, buy the thing, and then take it back somewhere else. Take it back, in this case, to Illinois. So again, this 0.25%, that seems like a very small percentage, and it is a very small percentage. But obviously, like I said before, the tax system can be more complex. The sales tax ideas can be really intricate, can get into some really muddy waters in there. We're going to stay out of the muddy waters of what it costs in Chicago versus what it costs in some rural town in Illinois and things of that nature. So hopefully this made sense. You should try the exercises always and see how well you do with those, and then move on to the next video.